Imagine for a second, just, really put yourself there. You are trapped in a tiny enclosed space.
Oh, that's already a nightmare.
Right. And there is a ticking clock right above your head, counting down the minutes to your absolute inevitable destruction.
Yeah, which is an objectively terrifying scenario just on its own.
It really is.
Yeah.
But now I want you to imagine a reality that is like infinitely worse.
If that's even possible.
Right. Imagine knowing with absolute clinical certainty that when that clock hits zero, you aren't actually going to die. You're just going to wake up exactly 10 minutes earlier,
Yeah.
staring at that exact same digital clock, only to do it all over again. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It is such a profoundly unsettling thought experiment, and honestly, it acts as the perfect foundation for the material we are pulling apart today.
Yeah, so for this deep dive, we are plunging straight into an excerpt from a webtoon script. It's titled The Abyss of the 4,000-Meter Loop.
A very fitting title.
Totally. And specifically, we are looking at Story 4, the 4,000-Meter Crush. Our mission today is to really unpack this story's masterful execution of, well, psychological terror.
And the inescapable laws of deep-sea physics, too.
Yes, exactly. And of course, the incredibly heavy burden of being the only person in the room who knows exactly what's coming.
What's really fascinating here is the specific format the creator chose to convey this horror. I mean, they utilize this highly detailed dual-voice audio script approach.
Yeah, it's not just visual panel descriptions.
Right. The narrative relies on two very distinct, opposing narrative voices that dictate the pacing.
Which is so cool.
It really is. So you have the scenario voice, which acts as the cold, impartial laws of physics. And then you have Elena's voice, representing the fracturing human element trapped inside them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's bring you, the listener, right down to the floor of the Mariana Trench and look at the actual physics at play here.
Oh, the setting is just incredible.
It is. The setting is the command module of the Nereus V, which is this advanced deep-sea research submersible. And the script paints this incredibly claustrophobic picture.
Just a tangled nest of exposed wires.
Thick titanium piping everywhere.
Glowing digital monitors.
Yeah, and all of it bathed in this eerie, sickly, bioluminescent green light.
Just setting that tone immediately.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it is exactly 3:05 p.m. There are 4,000 meters down. The water outside is barely above freezing. But the detail we really need to focus on is the pressure.
Right, the pressure.
Because it sits at an unfathomable 6,000 pounds per square inch.
Yeah, and that number is critical, right? Because it dictates every single event in the narrative.
Totally.
I mean, 6,000 pounds per square inch is a concept that the human brain legitimately struggles to comprehend.
I certainly struggled to visualize it, honestly. I remember reading once that 6,000 psi isn't just like a heavyweight pushing down from above.
No, not at all.
Imagine taking the entire weight of a fully grown adult rhinoceros.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and balancing it perfectly on a single 1-inch postage stamp.
That is insane.
Right. Now imagine millions of those rhinoceros-loaded stamps covering every single millimeter of that submarine's hull, pushing inward from all directions simultaneously.
I mean, that is actually an incredibly accurate way to visualize hydrostatic pressure.
Is it?
Yeah, because it's isotropic, meaning it applies equal force from every conceivable angle. Down there, the ocean isn't just water.
Right.
It behaves like a solid crushing vice. The scenario voice actually describes the submarine as a titanium bubble holding back a monster.
Such a great line.
And from a material science perspective, that titanium hull is undergoing immense compressive stress. The molecular lattice of the forged metal is being squeezed so tightly that the ocean is effectively probing the hull at a microscopic level.
You're searching for a weakness.
Exactly. It's searching for a single microscopic crystalline imperfection to exploit.
Man. And that physical reality makes our introduction to the protagonist, Dr. Elena Rostova, so grim.
It really does.
She is a lead engineer, right? In
Yeah.
her 40s. But when we first see her in panel 1, she isn't frantically working the controls or shouting orders.
Not at all.
She is completely paralyzed. Her hands are resting on the yoke, frozen, and she's just staring up at a red LED depth gauge.
Yeah, it's a very striking image.
And I initially felt like I was, missing context here. As a reader, I found it a bit jarring that we get absolutely no setup. We just drop right into her terror at 3:50 p.m.
Right, right.
Usually stories like this build tension with a slow descent or maybe a tense systems check. Why do you think the author chose to bypass that completely and start the story in media res?
Well, I mean, it's a deliberate subversion of the disaster genre,
Yeah.
and it relies heavily on the psychological concept of learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. Okay.
Yeah, because in a traditional narrative, a slow descent builds tension because there is still an illusion of hope, right?
Like maybe they'll fix it.
Exactly. The characters might find a solution. But by dropping us into the timeline at exactly 3:50 p.m., with Elena already paralyzed by dread, the author communicates immediately that the battle is already lost.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Her paralysis tells us that she has lived this 10-minute window countless times. She has been conditioned by the time loop to understand that no matter what action she takes, the outcome is fixed.
Right.
She is experiencing learned helplessness on a literal apocalyptic scale. It forces the audience to stop hoping for a rescue and instead share in her dreadful anticipation of the inevitable.
The dread of the waiting. That makes total sense. And it perfectly sets up the transition from the macro scale of the ocean to the micro scale of mechanical failure.
Yeah, the casing shift there is brilliant.
Because the destruction doesn't begin with the entire hull collapsing at once. The script zooms in on a heavy titanium flange near the ceiling,
Very specific.
specifically the right rear manifold, bolt sequence 7.
Right, and the scenario voice notes that a catastrophic failure at 4,000 meters never begins with a roar.
Oh, right. It begins with a whisper. We see a single microscopic bead of condensation shivering against the cold metal on the edge of a massive hexagonal bolt. And Elena's inner monologue reveals the absolute futility of her situation. In previous loops, she has tried everything to reinforce this exact spot.
Everything.
She's tried welding it, she has tried packing it with industrial emergency epoxy.
Nothing works.
Nothing. The ocean always finds that exact same microscopic weakness at exactly 3:52 p.m. She calls it the weeping.
So bleak.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite that learned helplessness you mentioned earlier, human instinct still forces her to fight back.
Of course it does. You can't just sit there.
Right. She snaps out of her paralysis, she climbs up onto the co-pilot's chair and grabs a massive heavy-duty wrench. And she uses both hands to violently torque this weeping bolt.
Yeah, her internal logic is driven by this desperate desire to shift the timeline.
Just to change something.
Exactly. She theorizes that if she can just turn the bolt a fraction of an inch, if she can torque it past its shear point before the internal and external pressures begin to normalize, she might secure it just long enough to blow the emergency ballast and ascend.
But the reality is much harsher.
Much harsher.
At 3:55 p.m., the thick steel handle of that heavy-duty wrench suddenly snaps completely in half,
Like cheap plastic.
like plastic. The script notes the jagged metallic edges frozen in midair and the sudden violent loss of leverage. That tiny bead of water instantly turns into a fine, high-pressure mist spraying into the cabin.
Cutting through her suit like ice water.
Yes. Now, I understand that she is desperate, but I need you to explain the physics of what just happened.
Yeah.
Why did her attempt to tighten the bolt make the failure happen faster?
Well, it all comes down to how mechanical stress interacts with hydrostatic pressure. As we discussed, the hull is already under 6,000 psi of uniform isotropic compression.
Right, the rhinos.
The rhinos, yes. Every component is holding together in a very fragile, highly tensioned equilibrium. When Elena takes a massive wrench and applies extreme manual torque to a single bolt, she introduces uneven, localized, torsional stress.
Oh, to a system that's already maxed out.
Exactly. A system that is already at its absolute breaking point.
So she is essentially twisting the metal while the ocean is trying to crush it.
Precisely. I mean, the bolt is designed to withstand compressive force, but she is applying shear force, lateral twisting.
Wow.
By forcing the threads to grind against each other under that immense pressure, she degrades the structural integrity of the seal. She didn't fix the leak, she actively deformed the titanium flange.
Oh, man. So she gave the water away in.
Yeah, giving that 6,000 psi of water a larger microscopic pathway to enter. This is why the whisper turns into a high-pressure hiss.
And that leads to one of the most chilling lines of the text from the scenario voice. The physics of the loop do not negotiate.
Such a powerful line.
By attacking the breach, Elena actually sped up the timeline. In her words, she made the ocean angry.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates a cognitive bias known as the illusion of control.
The illusion of control.
Right. Human beings are psychologically hardwired to believe that taking direct, forceful action in a crisis will yield a positive result.
Like doing something is always better than doing nothing.
Exactly. We equate effort with salvation. But the time loop violently strips away this illusion. The scenario voice specifically states, the illusion of control drives her to madness.
Wow.
Because in this hyper-pressurized environment, action equals acceleration. Her refusal to accept the immovable reality of the physics actually robbed her of 5 precious minutes.
That realization that her own survival instinct is the very thing killing her faster is just incredibly bleak.
Extremely bleak.
But as horrifying as the mechanical failure is, I want to pivot to the interpersonal tragedy happening inside the cabin, because it introduces a completely different kind of pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
Elena isn't alone in this titanium bubble. Sitting right next to her is her co-pilot, a 30-something engineer named Thomas.
The author creates a masterful juxtaposition here.
Yeah, they really do.
While Elena is trapped in this sweaty, terrifying nightmare of snapping steel and high-pressure mist, Thomas is completely oblivious.
Just chilling.
The script describes him calmly wearing headphones, logging data on a clipboard. The ambient hum of the life support scrubbers completely masks the sound of the hissing mist.
And it's devastating because he actually turns and smiles warmly at her.
Yeah, that part hurts.
Elena's internal monologue notes a routine, mundane detail. Thomas always asks her if she wants coffee when they hit the ocean floor. And this leads to a moment in the script that I genuinely struggled with.
It's a fun.
Elena sees the mist. She knows they are 5 minutes away from complete structural collapse. But she makes the conscious decision not to warn him.
She stays silent.
Yeah. She reasons that screaming will only buy him 3 minutes of sheer, unadulterated panic, so she chooses to just let it be. I mean, is it incredibly cruel to deny someone the agency of knowing they're about to die? Or is this an act of profound mercy?
I mean, it is a profound ethical and psychological dilemma, and the script doesn't offer a comfortable answer.
It really doesn't.
From Elena's perspective, providing him with agency is utterly useless because there are no choices left to make. The physics cannot be negotiated.
Right.
If she tells him she isn't giving him a chance to survive, she's only giving him the opportunity to experience the same agonizing terror that she is currently enduring.
So it is a kind of mercy.
Exactly. By withholding the truth, she shields him from the psychological torture of the countdown. But, as you pointed out, there is a massive cost to this choice.
The cost is her own total isolation.
Precisely. By staying silent, she locks herself inside a psychological pressure cooker that is arguably just as destructive as the physical pressure outside the hull.
Oh, for sure.
She describes Thomas in the script as a ghost who doesn't yet know he's dead. What's fascinating here is how the narrative redefines the horror of a time loop. The true terror isn't just the physical pain of the implosion. It is the unbearable weight of knowing.
She has to sit there carrying the absolute certainty of their gruesome deaths completely alone, all while surrounded by blissful ignorance.
Yeah, sensory isolation plays a huge role here. The deep ocean is already an alien, isolating environment.
Right, obviously.
But the time loop creates a secondary layer of isolation. Elena is the only conscious observer of a repeating timeline. Thomas isn't truly real to her anymore. He is just a recorded playback of a doomed man asking about coffee.
That is so dark.
The script forces us to realize that knowing the future doesn't make you a god, it makes you a prisoner.
Which brings us to the climax of the narrative, where the physical and psychological pressures finally converge.
Right, the end of the loop.
At 3:59 p.m., the structural integrity of the Nereus V fails exponentially. Elena notes that the internal pressure in the cabin spikes so rapidly that her eardrums begin to bleed.
Just horrible to imagine.
And then we get an extreme close-up of the submarine's viewport. The thick, domed acrylic window designed to withstand deep-sea exploration.
The visual script describes the pitch-black darkness outside being suddenly broken by a jagged, branching spiderweb of bright white cracks exploding directly across the center of the acrylic glass.
And the sound effect is visualized in massive, jagged red text. CRAC.
Yeah, you can practically hear it.
Elena refers to this sound as the acoustic gunshot. The scenario voice goes further, describing it as the sickening sound of a breaking spine.
Ugh.
Let's break that down, because I want to understand what is actually happening to that material. What causes an acoustic gunshot in the deep ocean?
Well, it has to do with how different materials fail under extreme stress. Acrylic is incredibly strong, but unlike metal, which can warp or dent, a process known as ductile yield acrylic tends to suffer from brittle failure.
Brittle failure, okay.
Yeah. When the compressive load of 6,000 psi finally overcomes the structural threshold of the acrylic dome, the material doesn't bend, it snaps catastrophically. Like glass?
Exactly. The sudden, violent release of kinetic energy as the molecular bonds tear apart creates a massive shockwave.
Oh, wow.
In the dense, hyperpressurized environment of the deep ocean, that shockwave propagates as an incredibly sharp, deafening sound. It's essentially indistinguishable from a high-caliber gunshot.
And it's that exact sound that finally shatters Thomas's blissful ignorance. He drops his clipboard.
Right.
But the horror is that he barely has time to process the sound, let alone the reality of what it means, because at exactly 4:00 p.m., the implosion occurs.
Yeah, and the way the scenario voice dictates this event is terrifyingly clinical.
It really is.
It strips away all the drama and focuses purely on the physics. The total destruction of the Nereus V takes less than a single millisecond.
Less than a millisecond. I mean, that is almost impossible to wrap your head around.
It is. The script explicitly points out that this event occurs faster than the human nervous system can transmit pain signals to the brain.
Oh, thank goodness. Right. When the hull is compromised at 4,000 meters, the ocean doesn't just flood in like a leak in a boat. The water is forced into the cabin at supersonic speeds.
Supersonic.
It is a kinetic energy transfer comparable to a massive explosive detonation.
Yeah, the scenario voice says, the ocean reclaims its stolen space.
Yes, and the physics of that reclamation are brutal. As the massive wall of water crushes inward, the air inside the submarine is compressed so violently and rapidly that it actually undergoes adiabatic heating.
Wait, what does that mean?
It means that for a fraction of a millisecond, the temperature of the air spikes to thousands of degrees.
Thousands of degrees.
Yes, igniting everything inside before the immense wall of freezing water instantly snuffs it out.
So it's a simultaneous state of incinerating heat and freezing kinetic violence.
Exactly.
The artist doesn't even try to draw the characters in this panel. It's just a chaotic, unrecognizable blur of white foam and tearing gray metal.
You can't even process it visually.
Elena's final thought is simply the realization of 4,000 meters of water falling directly onto her chest. And then nothing.
The script transitions instantly to panel 8, which is completely pitch black. The author contrasts that millisecond of unimaginable kinetic violence with instantaneous, absolute silence.
Yeah.
The scenario voice notes that the deep quiet simply returns. The ocean forgets they were ever there.
Wow.
The only visual cue left in the panel is 3 small, rising silver bubbles in the lower corner.
It is so chilling, the sheer indifference of the abyss. But, of course, the ocean is denied its meal.
This is a loop.
Right. Out of that cold, echoing silence comes a sharp, ragged gasp for air. We turn to panel 9, and the loop closes.
Panel 9 is dictated as an exact, shot-for-shot replication of panel 1.
Same exact thing.
The sickly bioluminescent green lighting returns. The tangled wires are identical. Elena is once again sitting in the pilot seat, frozen, staring up at the digital depth gauge.
Depth, 4,000 meters. Time, 3:50 p.m.
The timeline resets, winding the clock back like a cruel mechanism, trapping her in the myth of Sisyphus pushed to an absolute psychological extreme.
So what does this all mean? The narrative leaves Elena trapped with an absolutely crushing realization. She just lived through the trauma of the acoustic gunshot.
The supersonic implosion.
The milliseconds of destruction, yes.
Yeah.
And now she is right back where she started. Her internal monologue just coldly states the facts. The temperature outside is barely above freezing, and the manifold is about to weep.
You know, if we synthesize all the elements we've discussed today, the unstoppable hydrostatic pressure, the illusion of control, the psychological isolation, there is a profound thematic takeaway here.
Oh, for sure.
While you listening to this are obviously not trapped in a titanium submersible at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But the metaphor of the time loop is incredibly relevant to the human experience. We all encounter high-stress, cyclical situations in our own lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's in toxic relationships, in our careers, or in our battles with mental health, situations where we feel completely helpless.
Yeah, and often our reaction is just like Elena's. We grab a wrench.
Exactly.
We try to assert forceful, desperate control over a situation that simply cannot be controlled.
We try to forcefully wrench our problems into submission, and we just end up degrading our own structural integrity. We accelerate the breakdown.
Exactly. Sometimes, the harder we fight the physics of our situation, the faster the steel snaps. The narrative forces us to ask ourselves when our desperate interventions are actually saving us and when they are simply making the ocean angry.
That is an incredibly sobering perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which leaves me with one final thought, something I really want you to ponder as we wrap up today's deep dive. Elena knows the rules of her prison. She knows that doing absolutely nothing means the submarine implodes at exactly 4:00 p.m. But she also knows that her physical interference, trying to forcefully fix the weeping bolt, introduced uneven stress and sped up the timeline to 3.55 p.m. She lost 5 minutes by fighting the unchangeable physics of the machine.
So she's in a bind.
Yeah. So, if fighting the mechanical reality of the loop is physically impossible, what happens if she stops trying to fix the submarine entirely?
Oh, interesting.
What if she uses her 10 minutes to try something completely counterintuitive? What if the key to breaking a cyclical nightmare isn't mechanical action, but a psychological shift?
Hmm.
When that ticking clock above your head hits 0 and you wake up 10 minutes earlier, what do you change when you realize you can't change the machine? Something to think about.